Welcome back, listeners, to That's a Good Card. Today, Ya will have the challenge of getting me to say, that's a good card. While Ya will be doing the convincing, I'll be playing the devil's advocate. And stay tuned for the end of the video, where we'll be playing one of our favorite games, That's a Good Card, ? Also, now's a good time to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you're listening to us on YouTube, and please leave a comment below with your suggestion for our next card. Which leads us to today's card, which was actually recommended to me at a local tournament a few months back. I didn't get their name when I got this card recommended to me, but I wrote it down, and we're finally getting to it, and I'm really excited for it today, because it may or may not have seen some success in a recent large tournament. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ya. Ya, what have you brought to us today?
All right, so I know some of you think I have a reputation of bringing bad cards. I like to think of them as fringe cards to have a discussion about. And so I made sure to double check, mainly because Kyle vetoed the first card I brought to him. It was a hard no. And so...
Whoa. Look, I gotta keep us in the realm of reality here, Ya. So we gotta make sure that we keep ourselves in this competitive mindset.
I completely agree. Don't worry, I'm not talking shit. I'm more, if anything, I'm talking shit for myself. So this card happened to see play in a deck that made top 16 at Cowtown this last weekend. It was in a Malcolm and Vial Smasher deck, and the card is Quicken. Quicken is a blue instance for 1 blue pip, and it says, the next sorcery spell you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash. Draw a card. Oh, and the flavor text. A skilled Izzet Chronarch can carry out an epic vendetta between the fall of 1 hourglass grain and the next. Well, I don't think I had actually read that.
That's pretty
now.
good.
That's pretty good. I like that. What else? Where else do we see this card being played? It's being seen in some Niv lists. Kark Sakashima, as you would imagine. That deck likes to maybe give a sorcery, basically flash. It's also seen in some RogSi lists, mainly in the considering pile, especially some of the wheel-heavy versions.
And that's something that I'd seen too. So like that's basically the only deck that I had seen this played. I'm sure Kark really likes it because, you know, anything that's like 1 mana draw a card by itself is like kind of good and something where you can copy it a million times. So that doesn't surprise me. But at the same time, I had seen this list when considering my own RogSi list because I like the wheel heavy version of RogSi.
Yep.
So this is something that's kind of cool with that. So definitely seen it in at least the considering list. I don't think a lot of current lists are running it, but I know it's a thing.
And then the bigger surprise, I think both Kyle and I looked at this include and we're like, that's interesting. I mean, I can see why. It's also included in, I think, 2 or 3 Zur decks, maybe only the 2.
Yeah, that's kind of troll. I don't think it belongs there, but you know, but if you're one of those 2 Zur deck builders, leave in the comments down below why you think Quicken is really good in Zur. I don't think that's the deck. I think we should focus on the other ones.
But those are some of the decks that this is seeing play in, and like I said, this actually, I'm not sure if it was seen in play. I did watch some of the matches for Cowtown, but I didn't get to catch the Malcolm Vial list that made it to the top 16. But congrats to that pilot.
Yeah, congratulations.
So why did I consider this card, and why do I think it deserves to be in the main deck? I have, since Colin and I last talked about like what deck I'm going to be bringing to the Fishbowl, I'm still bringing Magda, but I've also been playing around with a Kark Thrasios list. And I have found myself in that list a couple of times, not knowing what a card is supposed to do, not knowing that it's a sorcery rather than instant, and have actually come up to situations where I really wanted to cast a sorcery, a Neoform, or a Finale of Devastation in response to something else, right?
That takes a very brave Magic player to admit that.
Yeah, totally.
It happens to everyone. I don't care if, you know, we've both been playing Magic for
a long time,
coming on decades. Yeah. And to this day, I think it just happens where sometimes you think you have a response and you go, oh, wait, that's sorcery.
Yep.
Happens to everybody. I think that not enough people are bold enough to admit that, so I applaud you for that.
And so I think that we've all come across that situation and always wanted to be able to cast it. Well, this card allows you to do that. And it's actually a fairly low investment to kind of get that. And so my first point for here is I wrote down, what's better than Born Upon a Win? Walmart Born Upon the Win, right? This is what this card is.
Walmart version?
Yeah, this is the Walmart version.
I don't know.
Right? Because instead of getting every spell you cast,
one shot.
You only get one shot, right? So this is one generic mana less, right? It also draws you a card. Now, yes, Born Upon the Win, before any of you leave a comment saying that Born Upon the Win is better, yeah, absolutely it's better.
Obviously.
It's obviously better, but it's also one extra mana, right, that you have to kind of leave up. And so for just one blue pip, you get to kind of test the water, right? Like you're going to go, hey, I'm going to try to cast a sorcery. You are putting your cards on the table, but I think for the investment cost, it's a really low cost, and you really do get to test that water because you're at the very least, if they can't counter it, they wasted a counter. Hopefully, one of the counters they had on something that you need to kind of set up something else.
Not only that, but it's like I guess the worst case scenario is that you're casting it, and you say that you're playing with your hand face up. But in reality, I feel like it's really easy to politic this card specifically, to just be like, I'm just going to fetch for an answer. Like, I'm just going to draw a card.
Right, you're cantripping.
Exactly. Like, I'm just going to draw a card. I'm just going to, feed this guy's heuristic study over here, see if he has an answer. This card is so low impact, seemingly.
Yep.
So people are like, oh, it's just like a little cantrip. They're not going to counter it.
Yeah.
So you can kind of slide under the radar, even though you're kind of playing face up in a way, because someone might think, oh, if you try to do that when you have like, you drew your card, land, pass, and you have like 6 mana up, and then you do it, okay, maybe some alarm bells are going to ring. But I feel like a lot of times people are just going to let this card go through.
Right. And it's, like I said, I love that it's like just one less pip, right? I know, like some of you are saying like, well, for one more, yes, you're going to get a Born Upon the Win and it's going to do better. But like, that's really is like, you're going to try to win, right? Like you're saving that card for a win. Whereas here, I think a situation that Kyle actually brought up to me that I'll mention right now is that you can do this, and hopefully, yes, you maybe you're playing Thrasios with some other cool partner, right? And you play this card out, and in response to somebody's Thassa's win, you try to Wheel of Fortune, right? You're now going to cause them to draw cards, and you were able to cast these normally sorcery speed Wheel of Fortune at instant speed.
Yeah, that's the second point of this, right? Is just it works as a way to stuff somebody. Because realistically in CEDH, this might be a good time to mention it, but the majority of sorceries that we find, like sorcery staple cards, are either board wipes or wheels.
Right.
It's like that's the most common sorceries that we're going to see here, with a bunch of random other sorceries that do various things. But board wipes and wheels are things that you pretty much see fairly consistently. So, having that ability to stuff a Thassa's Win with a Quicken into a wheel seems pretty dang good.
Right. And, so my first point, right, was that it's a cheaper Born Upon the Win, Walmart Born Upon the Win. The second point is, like, you're offensively kind of playing defense, is what I wrote down. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, right? Like, the ability, especially in this meta with Nadu, but being able to play your Dam or being able to play Toxic Deluge at instant speed is kind of a big deal. It's being able to stuff the Nadu player or the Winota.
Like a Magda with a big board state, right? Or a Winota. Yeah, there's a lot of
being able to
any guy's Cradle deck.
Yeah, being able to stuff any of those decks at instant speed while they're trying to go off, right, with an instant speed board wipe is kind of huge in this current meta. It really is really helpful. Or being able to wipe the board going into your turn can be really huge. Or after you've already done your thing, you've waited till the upkeep, now you're doing it to really kind of hose this the next player. I think it's a really big deal.
I love that. This card with a board wipe is so gas. And like the reason why is normally you play your board wipe on your turn, probably tap out all your mana for it, and then you have to pass the turn. And you have to wait for, now you've wiped the board for everybody, like sure, there's nothing left on the board, but at the same time, you're now last in turn order. You're now last to act, even though you were able to wipe the board. It's like the next other 3 players are going to be able to play before you do. And if you're able to board wipe the turn before it's your turn, now that is powerful, because now not only are you in charge / determining when the board is wiped, but you're also being the first to act after the board has been wiped.
Right. I just really like the different angles that this card allows me to kind of think about being able to go, hey, look, I'm going to go worldly tutor, or not worldly, neoform for a creature, and then now I'm going to be able to cast a sorcery speed in response to that I kind of need, right? I think the situation I'm trying to describe is one time I basically had a neoform with Quark triggers that would get me 2 creatures out onto the battlefield, and I wanted to basically play a molten duplication or a twin flame, right? To basically have that be out on the stack before that situation probably doesn't work, but like something like that is just kind of a really cool way to kind of be able to use this card to kind of give yourself a win where somebody may not expect it.
Yeah, it's a weird angle. It's attacking from a different angle. It's pressuring the board or the game state in a way that people won't see coming, especially in circumstances where someone else might be in the driver's seat. And when they're in the driver's seat, they have the blinders on. They think that they know all of the angles that they can be stopped from. And they're playing in a space where they're like, okay, this can stop me, this can stop me, this can stop me. But I'm aware of those things, so I'm going to go for the win because I can counter that. Right? And then all of a sudden, off the top rope, watch out, watch out, watch out. Someone plays Quicken and is able to play a wheel at instant speed or something ridiculous like that, or a mnemonic betrayal at instant speed. Something that completely comes out of nowhere and just absolutely poses your ability to do anything. You could play like a Praetor's Grasp in response and like screw up somebody's game plan. Like you could take out something from somebody's deck that they're going for. Like if they're going for like a breach line or like an intuition pile, you could just like yoink, take whatever you want at instant speed. There's so many possibilities to this in terms of like unique angles. Yeah. And I vaguely remember, oh man, I remember when I was looking at 2 RogSi lists, I vaguely remember, I wish I could find it now. I remember that there was one RogSi list that I had seen where the person was like huge on Quicken because of a lot of different reasons. I'm wondering if I can find that. If I find that, I will post a link in the description down below that kind of explained a bunch of these things. I'll look for it later. Anyway, there's like a bunch of weird angles that you can take with RogSi specifically because RogSi runs a lot of sorceries, right? Whether it's like sorceries for tutors or sorceries for wheels or sorceries for meme bet, whatever, right?
And honestly, the last bit that I have is it's a cantrip, right? It still draws you a card. It's a card that replaces itself. So it's not that dead in hand, right? Like, yes, there are situations where you're going to be like, I don't have any sorceries to cast. This is only going to hit a sorcery. But at the end of the day, it's kind of cycles itself, right? You're going to be able to cast this at somebody's end step to at least draw yourself into another card. And so it still replaces itself. And I think there's still a lot of value in being able to do that, to just dig a little bit deeper for the card you actually need.
Yep.
Cool, Kyle. So those are my points going over why I think this can go from your sideboard into your main deck. What do you think are some downsides that somebody should consider before slotting in Quicken?
Okay, I'll get into my downsides. So the first one is kind of a weird thing about this card, which is that the floor and the ceiling seem really close together for this card. And like, it seems too straightforward. And I know we just talked about how this card like opens up a lot of avenues and opens up a lot of cool play lines, but at the same time, it's pretty straightforward in what it's doing.
Yeah.
It's this weird place where, like we talked about before, this card's never going to get countered. And just based on that, does that mean it's a bad card?
That's a great way of asking that question. That's a really good way. I actually really like that.
So if this card is never going to be countered, I don't know if it has a high enough ceiling. Just because when I think of cards that are being countered, they're always the cards that have like a super duper high ceiling. not the cards that have like a really high floor. It's always the ones where people, like, alarm bells are going off, like, this is a problem, we need to stop this. This card doesn't do that. So inherently, by me thinking that, I'm starting to think that this card's ceiling is too low. And like the interaction point is going to be after on whatever the hell the next thing is cast is, right?
For sure.
So because of that, it's kind of just like, okay, well, this card, like, yes, it's an enabler, but on its own, the ceiling is just, in the floor, it's the same thing. It's like the card is the card, just as you're reading it. I wish I could quantify that in a better sense, but realistically, I'm just talking about the card quality.
Yeah.
And just saying that it's not good enough. So I really didn't want my point to just be like, this card isn't good enough. But that's kind of what birthed this thought process, was just thinking about how this is CEDH. A lot of decks are running, 10 to 15 counter spells. Counter wars happen every single game. And this is just, good cards get countered. And I don't know if this card's ever going to be countered. So does that mean it's not a good card? I don't know. There's some sort of transitive property of mathematics going on there. Maybe. I don't know. But that's my first point.
I think that's a really great point. And I mean, you're kind of now touching on like what some of the folks that listen, or actually probably don't listen to us, but love to leave comments, right? The people who interact with us. And thank you for that, by the way. Thank you to those folks.
Yeah, shout out the haters. I love them. They increase the engagement. Thanks, guys. And I can say that because we're 19 minutes into the video, and our average view duration is 9 minutes. So, they're long gone.
I think that those are folks that kind of want, I sometimes feel like they want CEDH to be a solved format, right? And this format very much isn't, right? And so it is.
No, not at all.
Somebody posted on Twitter something along the lines of like, let me play my really fringe deck, right? You don't get to be the police of what I think of it as fun, right? If I want to punch up, right? If we want to bring a card that we want to punch up, right? Because this card is punching up. There's no doubt about it. Like I'm for this card. I'm definitely going to be testing and playing this card, but at the same time, I know this card is punching up. Is it a Git probe? No, it's not a Git probe, right? Like a Git probe is free. Like that's why it's so much better. It does something pretty similar by drawing you a card, but it's also, to life, right? Which people are going to happily play for. This is not that
free.
card.
It's free, 100%. All right, my second point is I just think that it's a really narrow card in a sense that I don't think it's going to be playable in enough decks. Because of the card quality being low, you're not going to see it in 5-color decks. You're not going to see it in 4-color decks. Like the decks that are super lean and only have 4 to 6 spots to play with, you're not going to see it in those decks. Like the decks you mentioned, all are kind of like on the fattier side where there's kind of a lot of mix and match that you can do. Like Kurk Sakashima, and pardon me, all the Kurk Sakashima pilots, if you think you've solved the equation, because I know your IQ is double mine. I'm not trying to be sarcastic.
No, they are. That's
truth.
true. It's true.
I'm not smart enough to play Kurk Sakashima. But anyway, I just feel like there's a lot of little cantrippy / value cards that can swap in and out, and the deck still functions the same. And I don't think that you're going to see this card be able to push past all the best cards in all 4 or 5 colors, which just kind of stinks in terms of just talking about the card's overall quality of how it is. That's my second point. It's difficult to find a home for this card. Even if it is a good card, it's difficult to find a home for it. My last point is that sorceries are just really out of flavor. And not necessarily out of flavor, I guess, because CEDH has never really been focused on sorcery spells. Instances have always cast a shadow over sorceries because of just how valuable instants are, right? Like being able to respond to things, being able to cast them at any time is just so much better than sorceries. And to get the full potential of this card, you have to be able to run sorceries. You have to have sorcery in your deck, right? So like we're talking about some of the best decks in the format. I was just looking around at some really high performing decks at Cowtown, right? 256 person tournament. Cis-A lists run 2 sorceries. That's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
2. That's crazy, right? It's like Nadu runs 4 sorceries.
The tutors.
Some of the Timna decks are running 9, right? Not even 10. The two lists where you see a lot of sorceries are RogSi, which makes sense, specifically like wheelie RogSi, right? And Malcolm Vile Smasher, which was the list that we were talking about. And I think we should give a shout out, because we didn't do it before, to the pilot of that Malcolm Vile Smasher list.
Oh, yeah, please.
Big Richie 2004? Shout out Big Richie 2004 on Moxfield.
Nice job, by the way.
Great job. Congratulations. Congrats. Yeah. But yeah, my point is just sorceries aren't seen in a lot of lists. And it's really difficult, even if you are playing this. Let's say you're playing this in, we'll split the difference. Say you're playing it in TNT, right? Or TNK. You have 9 sorceries in your deck. What are the odds that you're going to have Quicken and the ability to play a sorcery in that same turn, same time? It's pretty low. It's not feeling good. Meanwhile, in a deck like RogSi that's running 18 or 19 sorceries, okay, now, you are now double as effective as a TNT or TNK list would be of playing this card. So I don't think it's really a question for a lot of lists. I just don't think that this card is good enough unless you're on a high sorcery count. And I can count on one hand how many lists are running quote unquote high sorcery counts. And I would say anything that's like 13, which is what, Big Richie was running, is probably the baseline.
That's a lot of sorceries. And when you say it like that, that's like a lot of sorceries.
It is. And I can kind of name off some of the things that they were rocking. Beseech the Mirror, Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Intent, Gamble, Imperial Seal, Jessica's Will, Demonic Betrayal, Ponder. Interesting, they're on Ponder.
Interesting.
Praetor's Grasp, Rite of Flame, Time Twister, Wheel of Fortune, Yawgmoth's Will. I think the super spicy ones that you're going to be wanting to targeting are obviously the Wheels. Meme Bet, right? Demonic Betrayal. Sure. Jessica's Will would be pretty sick. And then the Tutors. The Tutors to hand, specifically, are all really cool just because it happens instantly. Same with hitting something like a Beseech the Mirror, right? So if you are able to cast Beseech the Mirror at instant speed, then you're able to go grab something else. And I believe with those correct timing restrictions, because Beseech the Mirror lets you cast it in the resolution of the card, that means that you can cast whatever you grab at instant speed as well, if Beseech the Mirror was cast at instant speed. Not sure about that. Reddit judges,
let me know.
YouTube judges, comment down below. I think that's how that works. But if that is how it works, then that's kind of like the Magic Christmas line for this card. Is you're able to cast a big value sorcery at instant speed, but you've got to have sorceries in your deck. You got to have those big value sorceries to make it work. Otherwise, it's like, why are you playing this card? You might as well play literally any other blue 1-pip card that says draw card.
If you listen to our last episode, you'll know that I think we should all be looking at running some type of board wipe. Generally, they're in sorcery speed, and so this might be a good card to partner with that. Because of some of these big heavy hitter decks that are kind of seeing around. Nadu's probably not going to go away. If it doesn't get banned, I think that card is sticking around.
Yep, that's true. All right, yeah. What is the point that I made that you think is the biggest downside for Quicken?
I think the point about how many sorcery spells we actually run in any of our CEDH decks, that's the biggest thing, right? If you're putting in a card to maybe cast 8 spells, right, so maybe 9 to 11% of your deck, it's probably not quite good enough. I think that I looked through while you were talking, and I think the most I run is 9, right, in Thrasios Krark. And so for a little over 10% of my deck, one card that may actually be dead is not as good as you would want out of, again, the great quality of cards that we want in a CEDH deck. But this card, I think, could punch up. And so I'll ask the question back to you. At what point of mine makes you want to consider Quicken?
Yeah, I think the best point is one of the earlier ones we touched on, which is just being able to do a board wipe right before your turn. I think that is super powerful. Because especially if you're getting rid of stacks pieces or something like that, that's stopping you before your turn. And sometimes because the stacks pieces are out, your opponents aren't expecting you to be able to pop off. For example, I'll use a real life example. It's not going to really make that much sense now that I think about it, because I'm not in the colors for Quicken. But if someone's playing a Storm deck, let's say Korvold, if you told me now that there's an oof on the battlefield, right? And you're like, okay, Korvold's screwed. He's not going to be able to play the game because of oof. Let's say I Praetor's Grasp for a Quicken, and I also run Toxic Deluge, which I don't. But if I were able to board wipe before my turn and get rid of like a bunch of stacks pieces, like get rid of like an oof and a Archon and an opposition agent and just like all of the stacks pieces that exist, I think that's pretty cool. I think that that's something that not a lot of cards allow you to do. So, yeah, that's the best point. That's the Magic Christmas Dreamland for this card. That's the ceiling. So that's the best point that I think you made.
All right, Kyle. Have you changed your mind about Quicken? Were you convinced?
I don't think so. No, I am not convinced. And the reason why is just because it's just too narrow. It's super, super niche for the decks that want it. Am I slightly interested in throwing it into my RogSi list to see what kind of disastrous things I can make happen? Yeah, I'm interested. I think I will test it. And, like I talked about earlier, if I can find that list that ran it was a while back. But if I can find that list and see if there's other sorceries that my RogSi list isn't running that one is to make it like work even better, if there's like a Quicken RogSi cult around there, out there from the listeners, let me know. And I'm interested in that deck specifically just because of how many sorceries are played. But other than that, I don't think that there's really a home for this card, unfortunately, in the meta CEDH deck lists.
Well, folks, if you're listening to this and you are a Quicken stan and you think that I missed something and Kyle is wrong about the evaluation of this card, let us know in the comments. We always love hearing the discussion and we really appreciate it.
All right, yeah, it's time for our favorite segment. That's a good card, question mark?
That's a good card.
So this segment, today, Ya will be giving me a card, just the name of a card. So we're looking for something really obscure that I'm not going to really know what the card is. And the goal for me is to guess everything about the card. So Ya will be providing a card for us. And I'm going to be guessing everything about that card. So Ya, I'm ready for it whenever you are.
Today's card is called Bee Sting.
Bee Sting.
Bee Sting.
I like that. That sounds like that's a fun card. This is like the grizzly bears. That's what I'm thinking. But not like a creature. But this is what I mean. Yeah. I mean that it's probably just like a basic interaction piece. So I'm going to go a green instant. And I think it's going to say, it's got to be really bad. Deal 1 damage to any target. That's it. It's just 1 damage. Just like a little bee sting. It's just like a little prick. It's just like a zzz. So that's what I'm going to go with. And then the art is going to be, it's going to look like Bee Drill from Pokemon.
Okay.
Like a bee with the stinger out pointed forward. Ouch. So I'm going to do like a bee with the stinger pointed straight out, like 3D, pointed at the viewer. And then the flavor text. I got to get the flavor text. The flavor text is going to be... Youch!
Did you say the cost by chance? Did you say the cost?
Oh, 1 green pip. Yeah, 1 green pip.
Okay. Awesome. All right.
That's it.
I hope everybody's gotten a chance to give us a comment below of what you thought Bee Sting was. I hope you paused and played along with Kyle there. All right. Bee Sting is a green card. You were dead on.
Yes, let's go. 1 for 1.
It is a sorcery.
Dang it. A sorcery.
You ready for the best part? It is
oh god,
3 generic and 1 green pip. A 4-cost sorcery. Damn. And you ready for this? It is Bee Sting deals 2 damage to any 1 creature or player. Or another way to say it is Bee Sting deals 2 damage to any target. Yeah, that's right.
Whoa, no, because it can't target planeswalkers.
That's true. The errata says, to any target. And then...
Oh, does it really? That's so funny.
This is an older card. It's from Portal. Reprinted in Portal 2nd Age. And the flavor text is busy as a bumblebee, blistered as a goblin. Alabron saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I kind of got somewhat similar close to what it does.
The art, I'm going to actually give Kyle a thumbnail here, is like a goblin doing this and then surrounded by bees. Yeah. It's quite good.
Hold still.
It's quite good.
Do it again. I'm going to get a screenshot. Perfect.
Man, I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that as the art for bee sting.
Perfect. You just gotta Photoshop a bunch of bees around me, and that'll be great.
Yeah, a drill attacking you. That's what I'll do.
Okay, one final fun story. I've been stung in the ear 3 times from the time I was a child to as recently as 2016. In the ear. Lots of fun.
Wow. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We had a lot of fun talking about Quicken, which is something that you should be testing in your decks, because why not? Test everything. It's CEDH. This is not a solved format, right, y'all?
Not yet.
Please direct your attention down below to the links to our social media in our link tree, as well as any links that we provide down below, whether it was a deck list that we talk about. We'll probably link the top 16 deck list, as well as anything else that we talked about today on the show. Thank you so much for listening today. Please give us a like, a subscribe, and share it with your friends if you enjoyed our conversation about fringe CEDH cards. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next Monday.
We'll see you next week.